Just jumping in with a quick little shot. I know we have pre-releases coming up this week. There is a guide on this channel to winning your pre-release. Here we're going to take a little quick stab before everything comes out at predicting the meta with jump to Lightspeed and kind of where we are. So, just the contents of this. First off, shameless plug. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. There are several videos up here, including, as I said, the how to win your pre-release. There are videos of several of the decks that we'll talk about here. I am working on having some more of them out and available, and those should be up in the coming week. In this video, we're going to talk about the previous meta. We'll talk about some of the new leaders and the new options that are there. We'll talk about who got help and who might struggle, and then we'll finally end up with our meta prediction. So here we go. The previous meta, the last set, what we had when we really kind of broke everything down. Han, and especially Han Yellow, but filtered with some green. Han set 1 was the top dog of this thing. Without Boba Fett there, 54 leaders, 53 effectively. You see the 10 of them that really won just about everything. Spark Rebellion hunting Han, Sabine ECL, Palpatine filtered in a little bit. Some of the ones past Han and Sabine are kind of out of order. Jango Fett and Quinlan Voss on Tarkin Town. 2 versions of Boss with Vigilance and Command and are the main players. And then the outliers were things like Anakin Blue. You saw a couple of Darth Vader green, some of Grand Moff Tarkin with blue, and a view of Iden with blue. You get some things like that would slip in here and there, but your main players were the 7 on the left. So we're going to talk about some of the new ones and what we expect out of them. These are the things that I think are the most exciting to play, and therefore are probably the things that people will jump on and you'll start to see a little surge of. We're going to start off with 2 admirals, the Imperial Navy, Admiral Piet. Ramp is in his aspect, and we added a little bit of extra ramp with the capital ship, so he can bring out a capital ship on 5 and ramp. And then when he flips, if you have Baby Piet on the board, you can also ambush with that ship. And so the resupply carrier, in addition to the other ramp that was in Piet, makes him a very strong play. He pairs very solidly with both aggression and vigilance. There's some big ships and vigilance that you can get to that really control the board very well. But aggression and things like planetary barrage are just real powerful. He's also a great target for the turbo laser salvo and can really open things up that way. Grand Admiral Thrawn is one that I'm really excited to play with. He toolboxes incredibly well with aggression, and I like using him with exploit units to be able to put things down. Like I've a great sequence that I've been able to run several times will go Val turn 1, a droid missile platform turn 2, exploit in Dooku turn 3, and leave behind a 10-10 Dooku with 3 damage on him. But he threw a 2 and a 4 at something, and so is really able to kind of clean up the board pretty well. Or you can leave, a mere 8-8 Dooku with 5 damage and do 6 in indirect. So there's a lot that you can play with in Grand Admiral Thrawn, and I think that he is going to be a good possibility. The green-red Heroism shell. So this is kind of the same shell that Sabine really became the hallmark for. Less so with Leia, just because you lost the ability to ECL. But we've got 3 new leaders here that can all be very versatile players in that same space. A couple of them are red and still have the opportunity to ECL, or you can run wedge. And I do like the thermal oscillator a little bit better with that green shell if I've got a green leader, or with that red-green shell if I've got a green leader. Uses pilots very aggressively. A lot of help on the ground. The Leia unit that's there, Chewbacca, Poe, and Luke, red 5, black 1 are all really good. It's got the strongest gambit that we have in the new set with Trench Run, especially if you're playing against a bunch of aggressive decks. Trench Run is going to not ping you back very hard. and it's going to give you a +4/+0. So it's a really solid way to get in some high damage quickly. This is kind of weak to unit and upgrade removal. I mean, now Luke won't come off of a ship that he makes into a leader unit, but the others are able to be upgrade removal. Poe is a little bit interesting because he doesn't create a leader unit when he flips, and so you actually could have tokens that get stolen with Poe aboard. But that is a thing that has been clarified, so that's a little fun side note. But Wedge can also fit a yellow shell that has some one-cost pilots in it and make those pilots deploy for free. The other big new option here, and I just like the art, so I left it as the big one, is indirect damage. I'm not sure if there is enough indirect damage yet to make this the only thing your deck does. But Boba Fett has probably the most powerful leader deploy, just kind of depending on the situation, with his ability to do the mini bombardment, as long as he jumps in as a pilot. You're in aspect for Devastator and Planetary Bombardment. A lot of your non-combat damage events are red, so he's already in that. You can pair this with green, which I've done in another video, and access ramp and overwhelming barrage. When I did that video, the cheapest unit that you could put out that was a capital ship was the Outlaw Corona, and that has since changed, but you still have the ability to ramp in and deploy this guy on somebody else's 5-resource turn, and really be a menace because he can clear the board, he can overwhelming barrage, he can planetary, he can do a lot of stuff like that. He does have a little bit of a weakness if your opponent has a lot of big, beefy units, and the pilots can make some of those ships very hefty. And so they can absorb a lot of this indirect, but it still is shrinking the board on the other side. So I do like kind of where this is going. I'm not sure if there's enough indirect damage yet to make this the focus. And then we have some of our kind of outliers. Darth Vader and the Overwhelming Swarm, being able to play a couple of space units and ping with TIE fighters, and then all of a sudden you're looking across the board and there's 7 TIEs that are sitting there, is just real powerful, especially when you have things like Victor Leader that can come down and make them all +1s, or other pilots that put experience tokens down, or things that grow when token units are down, are just really powerful plays. Playing the numbers there with Han, he's not as able to do he's not able to do the 3-drop turn 1. With Han 1, you could play without a 2 in your deck if you chose to. This Han, you're wanting to play with a lot of odds in your deck, and it's very possible to do that, especially with the 1-cost space units and the 1-cost pilots that exist now. You can make it where most of your turn 1 plays would be 1 cost, and this it's not as effective as Boba Fett was at creating a giant flip turn, but it can turn all 5 of your resources back. Tribal synergies. What do I mean about tribal? Tribal refers to any specific trait, in this case like resistance or first order, where I'm trying to be all within that grouping. Rebel has a pretty big tribe. Imperial has a pretty big tribe. Resistance and first order might still be a little bit too small. Holdo might be a little bit too slow because she comes out on 6 with a okay body, but a very slow action. And then Captain Phasma lets me ping damage, and she's a little bit quicker, coming out on 5 with a nice hefty body behind her. It's just a matter of, are there enough first order things to create that tribal synergy? I imagine that we probably will get some more as we finish up sets 5 and 6, but we'll see where that goes. And then the aggressive deployments. You do have 2 new leaders that are coming in at 4, and those are Major Von Reg and I'm going to say his name wrong because I didn't watch that show, Kadzua. And Kazuha is a really interesting one here with the ability to take an extra action. So he can turn off whatever it is that he needs to turn off and then take the action that follows. And that's a really interesting synergy to play with. Who got help? The meta decks that got the most help. Number one, Jango Fett. The War Juggernaut, IG 2000, are big units to be able to ping the entire board. The ground presence got upgraded majorly by this War Juggernaut, which is a vehicle, so you can use Triple Dark Raid on it. You also can use Triple Dark Raid to pull out Devastator and do 13 damage to the board. Previously, the biggest thing that we could do to the board was a Wrecker ECL. That was the biggest single swing that you could have. And you would do 12 damage to the board plus base. Devastator is going to come for 13, and it's going to allow me to do any indirect damage at my choosing. And then is a live ready to swing 9. Or War Juggernaut, if Jango is flipped, can just exhaust the opponent's board. And if it's coming in off of Triple Dark Raid and coming in readied, each of those damage units, including your own, it's +1/+0 for. So it's just a huge couple of bodies that you have there. Spark of Rebellion Han, the Han Solo pilot, is fantastic for this. And the body on the ground isn't bad, but as a pilot, especially putting in Falcon, you make that a big body chip that came into play ready. The Mandalorian, since you are playing in double, especially if you're playing in double yellow, you don't have to worry about his double aspect. But the piloting is a single aspect and can drop in and exhaust units. Boshet can create card advantage as though you needed more of it. So Han got a big boost. The other one that really got a big boost out of here was Quinlan Voss, especially his discard strategy. Previously, you were looking at K2 as your discard delayed. You had to wait until K2 was killed off before you could discard a card. Ahsoka comes out with a 1 smaller HP, but she comes out and discards a unit immediately, or discards a card immediately. And if that card's a unit, she's able to exhaust something, so she's a lot more impactful on deploy. Jam Communications is just a nice one. There's a lot of very good events that are in this deck, and this allows me to look at a hand and discard 1 for 1. And that's a very powerful play. And then Anakin Skywalker is a turn 1 unit that can turn on Force Throw. So a lot of good power and a lot of good addition here for Quinlan in this set. Sabine got some big help. Blue Leader is just an amazing space unit for her. The ability to come in and ambush at 3 and clear off that lane a little bit more is something that she absolutely lacked previously. Tandem Assault, you don't have to worry about the Rebel requirement anymore with Tandem Assault. It's still going to gain you the +2 that you would have gotten if you were using Rebel Assault and the +1 on 2 different units. And it still attacks the same way. Red 5 and Black 1, which also can go in the Quinlan decks, especially Red 5. Red 5 is fantastic for Quinlan. It's good for Sabine. It's amazing in Quinlan because with Red 5 on the board, when I swing it, I can do 2 damage to the unit that Quinlan already damaged. And so it's able to clear out units very efficiently. Who else got help? Some of the forgotten of the early sets. Gar Saxon added 6 units that are shielded in the vigilance and cunning aspects, and 1 in the, 5 and then 1 in the villainy element. But it's now very possible to run a shield-based Gar Saxon deck where everything that you're dropping is +1 health or +1 attack. And it's very durable because it has a shield. Leia got more rebels. She got a tighter draw with Thermal Oscillator. I would encourage you, if you're interested, to look at the Changing the Math of the Game video in this channel, where I did a run of Leia's deck with Thermal Oscillator. Grand Moff Tarkin added Victory Leader, and that is huge for something that is a deeper Imperial pool and able to put experience tokens on it. And so being able to drop out Victory Leader and make everything +1/+1, and then possibly give experience tokens or pilots to Victory Leader is a very powerful play in a card that already did fairly well. And then Dooku. Invincible is a 6/6 that you can drop on turn 2 as long as you have something to exploit. Invisible Hand can create a vulture droid swarm, or really any of the droids. Now, granted, it's a small droid, but you could also pick up your big ones if you chose to with the on attack. In its second turn on the board, you can attack with it, take a droid into hand, and that droid then buff your others. So it's a very interesting play to see if you can build around. Especially, even though he comes out late, it's a huge body at 5'9". And so we'll have to see if Dooku can make some splash. Other things that might have gotten critical mass: piloting an ambush added for Green Boba Fett for the Heroism version. And those are good keywords, especially the ambush. And we showed Blue Leader already, but you have several other units that can come in and ambush big and be good answers for things. Emperor Palpatine, if you're running double green, got Unity of Purpose. He added more ramp with the resupply carrier, and then the 2 new bases that have more health really can change. The thing that you were always worried about with Palpatine was, can you survive long enough to be stable? And if you can be stable by the time that he flips, he is hard to beat. But getting there and having enough life to stabilize was always the hard part. 33 or 35 health might do it. Harrison Dula got more Spectres. I'm not sure that there's, I said tribal earlier, I'm not sure if there's a big enough tribe there on curve to be able to run all Spectre, but she now has enough that she could run double aspect, that she could run really any base color that you want and try and kind of play around with it. And then any non-aggression leaders that are playing red. One of the things that I talk about in another video is the difference in math when you're talking about Thermal Oscillator and 5 less cards in your deck versus playing a full 50. And this is one where you get a good opportunity to draw your cards better, make your plays more consistent, and just kind of be in a better position overall. Who did this hurt? Well, Bosk possibly. JTL might put out more. You're going to see a bigger emphasis on units, I think, and that might mean more than Bosk can just readily control, or Palpatine might just do that job better. Kiara didn't get a lot of help in this set. Anakin's units already punched up pretty well, but it was limited. It was very limited in space, and this deck is very space, or this set is very space heavy. Those bigger space units are going to create more volatile turns, especially if he doesn't have answers, because the thing that you wanted to do with Anakin was to be able to control the ground enough, do some damage to your base, be just fine, and then deploy a huge leader. But if you've got a huge leader, but you don't control that space lane at all, it's going to be hard to think that you're going to get back into that race. So finally here, the meta prediction. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because we've talked about quite a bit of them already. Jango Fett, Quinlan Voss, Spark Rebellion Han, I think got the most help, and I think they stay on top. Not only are these decks that people have played with and played for a long time, so familiarity and just the ability to play something that you're very well versed with and know what's going on is very beneficial. But add that into the toolbox that they already got, and you're going to see them stay at the top. Admiral Piet, Grand Admiral Thrawn both show well, especially I think Piet Red, which has a strong ramp, gets to some big in-game ships very early. I think those are decks that I'm very excited to play with, and I think other people might be as well. Same thing with Boba Fett. I think that people have loved playing that character, and he provides a very good and solid field, especially if you're playing him in green. I think that that's a good way to weaken the board, and then you have both Overwhelming and Planetary Barrage. I think Sabine diminishes as a percentage of the overall field. She was still 20% of decks in a lot of the PQs, things like that happened. In spite of the fact that she might not have been making top tables all the time, she still represented a huge portion of the field. I think that the green hero shell, the green-red hero shell, remains quite strong, but that what we see as leaders in that shell diversifies. So we're going to see more of Poe, Luke, Wedge, Leia, instead of just all crowded into Sabine. As I said earlier, I think that Palpatine and Boss kind of flip places. These two were winning decks, but not every single time. When you sat down against one of them, as if it played well, it was very good. If it played poorly, it was just kind of there. If it played Sabine, often it just kind of faltered, especially Palpatine. Now with some of the help that they've gotten, I think that those two flip. Bosch still remains a part of it, but Palp overtakes. And then the fringe decks become more viable. As I said, in the previous sets, there were 53 leaders that you could have. We added 18 to that. So we're going to be at 71 possible leaders. And instead of there being 11 that represent, I think that you're going to expand that field a little bit and, 15, 18 leaders that are possibilities that are able to kind of play into a wide field and see where we go. Let me know what you think. Take a look around the rest of the channel if you get the opportunity, and take a look at some of the decks that are already there. I will be releasing more as I get a chance later on this week or this weekend. But yeah, like the channel, subscribe. Thanks for being here, and until next time.